Welcome back, guys. It's the Chad X podcast here for you today. It's been about a week since we last spoke with you, since we last recorded, and a lot has happened in that week. It feels like the news cycle nowadays moves so quickly that by the time I'm able to release these podcasts for you and give you our thoughts, my thoughts on everything that's going on, and invite you to provide some feedback for the discussion, so many things have already happened that it almost feels like it's outdated the second I release it. But we're gonna do we're gonna make a real effort to improve things, get that turnaround time down, and we're gonna have things out so that you can hear them before the next five things in the news cycle happen, and we're already on to the next thing. You know what I mean? So this week, here to help with that, here to help discuss all these events that have happened, we have our usual guest, Mr. Ferris. Say hello to the people, Ferris.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Perfect. And to try to get ahead of that ever increasing speed at which the news cycle rotates, we're going to do it in a unique way today. We're going to focus on a past story, something that happened this past week that we would have devoted an entire episode to previously, but now we're going to just sort of focus on it as one part of it. We're going to talk about what we consider to be the present, so what at the time of recording is the most pressing of the major stories that has occurred. And we're going to do a little bit of projection so that hopefully we can project what the big issue will be next week, what the thing of the news cycle will be, so that we're ahead of it there, and our episodes don't feel dated immediately. And to start off with, we're going to start with the past. We're going to start with the plane crashes that have recently occurred. So a lot of you are probably aware it was a really big story that there was a plane crash. Crash is an interesting way to frame it. There was an aircraft accident that occurred in the Washington, D.C. area. A passenger flight crashed into a military helicopter. Both vehicles were destroyed. There were no survivors at time of recording that had been found. They found bodies and pieces of bodies, unfortunately, but there really hasn't been. There's been no confirmation of any survivors, and nobody's expected to survive by all the experts. Based on, there have been two sort of opposing theories to this. The side that's come out from most of the experts in aviation is that this occurred due to an accident, a human error that occurred with the flight control people, the people who are air traffic control, who direct the flights of military and commercial aircraft vehicles to navigate them around landing sites and flight paths. Some error occurred at some point. I've heard the recordings myself, but as someone who's not really an air traffic expert, it all sounded normal to me. It sounded like everything was going fine until it wasn't, and a lot of people died, unfortunately. Then there's the opposing side, which has been purported by a lot of right wing figures, namely Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, the president and vice president of the U.S. They have said that a a lax hiring policy in terms of standards for air traffic controllers. They are federal employees, has resulted in their beings. They blame this on DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, depending on which definition for the acronym you use. They've said that those practices led to a lowering of hiring standards and the standard and quality of person getting into those roles, and that has one produced worse air traffic controllers, and two, put a lot of stress on the air traffic controllers who are good, who are in those roles. And they're blaming those practices for the shortcomings here that led to this error, that led to these people's deaths. There was another one. We'll get into that next. But first, go ahead and give us your thoughts, Ferris.
Hey guys, so it's kind of crazy because I've seen the video regards to the incident in DC, and then I think there was one in Philadelphia if I'm right, or I saw there was one in some other place,
There was one in
but like
Philadelphia. There had been, I believe, four total. The highest fatality was
yeah,
in D.C., and the second highest, I think, was Philadelphia. We will discuss those
yeah,
two.
I just think it's a lot of it's really pretty scary out there, man. Especially like if you're having a flight that's gonna be close time, especially in the U.S. Um, I do believe it's the fact that because they laid off a lot of these federal employees because of quote unquote DEI, which is ridiculous. Because if I saw a statistic was saying last year they were in need of these air traffic controllers. They needed people and they couldn't get people because there's not enough people to be able to get that job, and they're trying to hire people for the role, but and now that since they cut even more people, now it's a bad situation because that is if I'm right, I don't know for sure. I've heard something in regards to like they had like one guy deal with the air traffic controller in the one in DC. I'm like, that's insane. So they barely had people doing that, which is not good at all. It
A
just
lot of
makes it things more dangerous. So
overworked people. Yeah,
a lot of overworked people, and then like one person can't do multiple jobs, you know? So it's gonna cause being like flying more dangerous. Of course, this is a unique situation, specifically the DC one, because it was a crash with a military helicopter. I think it was like a, what, Black Hawk uh,
it was a helicopter.
helicopter.
Yeah, it was. I believe that may be the type. It was definitely a military grade helicopter though, and because of
Yeah.
that, there have been a lot of conspiracy theories popping up around this. Most notable one is that the uh, the spokesman for the government, the press secretary, I believe it was, used the phrase "continuity of government mission" as in terms of what the helicopter was doing in that area, why it was flying around that area, what was going on. And the term "continuity
Hmm.
of government" is sort of a charged phrase within a lot of people who are very politically aware circles. That refers
Hmm.
usually to martial law and similar things. It's the idea that in the event of some catastrophe, a nuclear strike, an EMP going off in the Pentagon, some real major strike, Pearl Harbor type thing, 9/11 type thing.
Hmm.
They would have the ability to enact martial law and keep the populace under control while they resolved whatever situation it was going on and prepared for the necessary countermeasures militarily. So the fact that this was described as a continuity of government mission triggered a lot of people to think that, oh, this is a probably a false flag maybe, or a false flight that just didn't go right, or that they are setting up for a martial law type thing. And that kind of really transitioned us clearly to our next topic, which is the present, the current event that's going on right now, in which the U.S., or at least Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., has said that he wants to enact something like a form of martial law in the Gaza Strip. He wants to go into that territory, remove he says 1.5 million Palestinians in that area. Prior to the uh, prior to the attacks by Israel, I will say that the population of that region was 2.2 million, according to U.S. statistics. So him saying 1.5 implies that he believes the death toll is between 7 and 800,000 people, whereas Israel is officially reporting the death toll as just over 60,000 civilians. So, a bit of a gap there. But if the numbers he is purporting are true, it still involves one of the largest acts of displacement of people, and according to the international community and international justice courts, an act of ethnic cleansing, the largest we've seen since at least the 1990s, during the breakup of Yugoslavia. So this is, and he's saying he wants the U.S. to go in and take ownership of the area. He's not saying he wants to remove those Palestinians to give them over to the Israeli government, which the Israeli government has stated for a long time that at least the furthest right wing members of the government, and many more beyond that, have said that they view taking the Gaza Strip and the West Bank annexing them into the territories of Israel is their major goal. It's the number one thing they want to do. They have a lot of settlements that have been ruled illegal by international courts in the West Bank already, and now it looks like they're trying to do the same thing and make the entire Gaza Strip one illegal settlement. They've also recently annexed the Golan Heights from Israel during the downfall of Bashar al-Assad, the
Hmm.
previous leader of Syria. So they've annexed parts of Syria already. During their war with Lebanon recently, they annexed parts of Lebanon, or attempted to. The amount of territory they control as a demilitarized zone is not as large as their initial goals seem to be, but they do currently own a portion of Lebanese soil. They have annexed it as a demilitarized zone. They've done the same thing already with the Golan Heights, and they are now attempting to do it with the Gaza Strip in a roundabout way. This seems to be part of a series of concessions. So Donald Trump did make a deal. He did pressure Netanyahu to enact a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip during Israel's wars with the Palestinians of the region. In the process, a lot of people thought Donald Trump was just throwing his weight around. He was really sort of bullying, showing that he is the foremost political leader of the world right now. But it's looking more like it really was a true deal in terms of Donald Trump got the good press of being the president to enact a ceasefire, which a lot of people have been clamoring for. But he also made concessions to Benjamin Netanyahu and the right wing Israeli government in that he would forcibly remove 1.5 million Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, force them into either Egypt or Jordan, most likely Egypt, based on the geography of the Gaza Strip, and redevelop the area into a new settlement under American administration, which he says would allow for all the people of the world to come in. which implies that it would no longer be a Palestinian refugee camp. I mean, I don't even know how to describe the region of the Gaza Strip. It's the closest thing to an autonomous refugee camp in the region as we can imagine. I mean, there's refugee camps in Jordan, Syria, in Palestine, all over the region, in Israel's territories in the West Bank. But Gaza Strip is a very unique one because it's technically self-governing, but it's completely under military occupation by Israel. It's a really strange thing that's going on, and it really does showcase that we may be entering a new era in Middle Eastern politics and in American involvement in the Middle East, which I know it's a lot of our listeners are going to say, oh, well, America's been involved in the Middle East for 30, 40 years now. Like, that's pretty much our whole foreign policy is just what's going on in the Middle East. But I'm telling you right now, I do believe this is signaling a big shift. Your thoughts, Ferris?
I actually agree with you. I think the U.S. the way Donald Trump has said it last night, he's literally said that he wants it to be a U.S. territory, which is unique. That I've never heard that. Usually, the U.S. helps another nation try to like, meaning like not helps actually, but the United States usually topples a government and places a puppet, usually in the Middle East. That's what their foreign policy has been for 30 years. But it's this time he wants to own that property. He wants the U.S. to own that property and make it like an international thing. It's very odd. My thoughts are that I don't believe it's going to happen. The reason why is like Jordan, Egypt, and a lot of the Arab countries already said no, no, we're not going to accept the Palestinians in Gaza. They believe that's their home. They need to stay at their home. Um, and then also the fact is the Palestinians in Gaza are not going to leave. They're not going to want to leave. So for me, it's like Donald Trump has said he might use the U.S. military, but like if you use the U.S. military, you have to you're gonna have to like it's like slaughter all of them to for him to leave, which is of course a war crime. I don't think I honestly don't see like Europe allowing that's happening because right now there's a push I see with Europe and the European countries and well the world in general and the U.S.
A
So
pushback against the
uh
U.S.
yeah, because I saw like right now like Germany has announced Germany, France, England, they all announced that like the Australia has announced too. They all said like no, we don't want what the U.S. is doing. We want a two-state solution. Gaza's for the Palestinians and all that. So they're getting like the other side of the world is going against the United States with this.
A
So
side that has
it's
traditionally been very pro-Israel, pro-Israel expansion, even.
who
Just
Germany.
European nations, Germany, Australia, all these nations that are turning against the U.S. in part in its support of this plan are all nations that traditionally have been in lockstep with both the U.S. and Israel. And this is a coordinated effort. Netanyahu was present when Trump made this announcement, and he did not disagree with anything Donald Trump
Yeah.
said. So this is a coordinated effort by the two nations that usually have the support of the Western world.
Yeah. I just think I'll be honest with you, Chad. I think what's happening is he we talked about this I think in the last episode regarding to currency. I think this is what's going to happen in the future. I think right now Trump's policies are because he's just throwing tariffs around like crazy right now. He's saying he's going to put tariffs on the EU, on the UK, on Canada, on Mexico. Even so, Canada and Mexico they have a month now extra now. Um, but he's planning to put tariffs on all these countries. The issue I have is like now what you're doing, you're pushing your allies away.
And
You're punishing your allies. What I'm seeing is this you're isolating us. He's gonna isolate the United States.
he's been
Once he
very
isolates the United States, you're pushing your allies towards China and Russia. Just letting you know. So
I mean, he's been increasingly isolationist. He's been this term, this first, I mean, not even a full month
Mhm.
yet of his term, this first like 2.5 weeks, he's been very, very much an isolationist politician, which is in line with what he's always done. Even in his first term, he had a reputation internationally as a peacemaker, someone that didn't want to start foreign wars, didn't want to be involved in any of that.
yeah,
There were, some trade offs with Iran following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, their general, but in general, Donald Trump not very politically involved in the Middle East or elsewhere. This is almost it's a contradiction to everything else he's been doing. The terrorists, the anti-Chinese sentiment, the negotiations to take Greenland. He's been very North American continent focused at the very least. You know what I mean? He wants Canada, he
Yeah.
wants Mexico a little bit, he wants the Panama Canal back, and he wants Greenland. It's like, all right, he wants North America, and the rest of the world can do whatever. But now the
Yeah.
idea of taking territory in Gaza, and it almost reminds me, the closest comparison I can make, which this isn't one to one, but it's the closest thing I can think of, is the situation the U.S. had with the Panama Canal prior to the 1970s. Because prior to that, the Panama Canal Zone was considered a U.S. property. This is a U.S. owned territory, similar to Guam, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, things of that nature. It's a U.S. territory. We did give that region back to Panama, and they now control it, and Donald Trump seems to want to
Hmm.
reverse that. But it wasn't a region where American governance, American leaders, politicians, workers, companies, all of those held precedence, and the laws of America applied, which is similar to what he's describing with Gaza. And the interesting part is he's saying he wants to make it for people from all around the world, which the Panama Canal construction was. It did involve people from a variety of nations, but anybody born in the Panama Canal Zone was a U.S. citizen. So the idea of him doing that in Gaza and making it sort of an extension of a U.S. territory, similar to Puerto Rico, anybody born in Puerto
Hmm.
Rico is a U.S. citizen. So it's going to be like
Yeah.
if this does go through, that's the worst case. Nobody backs down. The U.S., not Israel, annexes Gaza as its own territory. What's going to happen to one the people who are native to the region, who are from the region, the Palestinian refugees from other parts of the area that had to be displaced there after the establishment of the state of Israel? I mean, it's just a complicated situation. I mean, the pessimistic but somewhat obvious answer would be they're going to be forced to stay in Jordan, Egypt, and the new region is just going to be all Israeli and American businesses and things like that.
Yes.
That's the
Yes. That's what the plan is. I don't believe he really wants his goal is to kind of literally what's the word I'm trying to look for?
annex, colonize.
He's annex, he's colonizing, of course, annexing, ethnically cleansing
Yeah,
the area. That's what his plan is. He's trying to ethnically cleanse the area. They're not gonna come back if they leave. They know that. So that's why I'm telling you, like, I don't see them leaving. And I hope they're gonna fight for that land. We know that. If
I
they
mean, they've
went
been
through a
fighting for it.
genocide for, yeah, they've been fighting for it. If they've just been through a genocide, they're gonna fight back to continue, you know?
Yeah,
So it's this honestly goes against everything that Trump has promised the American people, which was, okay, I'm going to be a peacemaker and stay away from wars. No war, no war. Well, he's going to take the United States to war. He really is.
yeah. And you know
It,
what?
but it, mhm.
In a contradiction to the sort of running theme of this channel, this podcast, I don't know if I can blame old people for this one because a lot of the research I've been doing independently to see who would promote this idea, one, it does seem like it's mostly coming from Israeli circles, particularly some of the members of Netanyahu's cabinet, some of the ministers in his alliance, some of the other politicians and members of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. A lot of them seem to be the ones who have suggested this. They've had this as an idea for a long time. They wanted to enact it as part of their concessions they got with enacting a ceasefire. And
Mhm.
majority of those guys, those extreme far right ministers, under the age of 50. They're in their 30s and 40s. The Israeli right wing is a young organization. As much as I mean, I hate to admit it, they're
Yeah, the Likud party.
yeah, a lot. There's a few other parties in that. I mean, there's a few other parties in that alliance that are extremely young in terms of membership. The older generation of Israelis actually less pro ethnic cleansing, less territory annexation hungry, less war hawkish, less hawkish than the young
Mhm.
crowd. So for this one to all the people who have been commenting on the videos and saying so, sending me messages saying, "Hey, you're very critical of old people. Can we calm that down? Why do you hate old people so much? Why are you so anti-old?" I'm not gonna say I'm not. I'm not gonna backtrack on any of my previous statements, but for this one issue in particular, this is young people destroying the world. My generation and the one before me, we're messing this one up. So, hey, old people, you scored a point here today. I guess you know what I mean. One for the olds, a million for the young people in favor of who's suffering more because of other people's decisions. That brings us on to our final story of the day. We're gonna have this one be a long episode, not as long as the attempted live cast, but this is gonna be a longer one because I do want to give this next topic a little bit of attention, and that is the spreading bird flu epidemic. So, kind of just to lighten things up after all that heavy talk we just had, One of the major effects of this bird flu epidemic is that Waffle House is now charging all their customers a 50-cent surcharge for each egg used in a dish. So, the notorious restaurant, kind of known for staff that'll fight you if you act crazy, people getting drunk at 2 a.m., fighting in the parking lot, staff fighting customers, customers fighting customers, chairs getting thrown, chairs getting caught. We've seen a lot of viral videos. Waffle House is really part of the American cultural zeitgeist and the larger global cultural zeitgeist through the internet and those viral memes about it. And it seems like even they, notorious for being economically friendly, very nice to your wallet. They're a great place to go if you're a little strapped for funds, but you want a good meal. Even they're having to ramp things up because of the effects of bird flu. It is killing millions of chickens every month. I mean, over the same time that the plane crash was going on, there was a story that kind of got swept under the rug that on the East Coast, in one state alone, I can't remember which one it was, I believe it was Maryland, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that one. But in one East Coast state alone, 1 million chickens had to be culled all at once, 1 week. So there's been 3 to 4 million chickens dying every month from bird flu or from bird flu related culls. It's spreading to cows, cattle, dairy, all sorts of things. And the number one thing that appears to be getting affected right now is going to be the eggs. So if you're in New York City and you want the famous bacon, egg, and cheese, a lot of the bodegas are shutting down their operations, running out of eggs. So it's just bacon and cheese, and a lot of people don't really want that. So, Ferris, your thoughts?
Um, the only thoughts I technically have with this is I think I remember something similar like this happening in the past. Just it's gonna be temporarily affecting everything. It's gonna be temporarily affecting the amount of eggs we get, the chicken. Even if you want to eat chicken, it's gonna be affecting for a little bit. But give it some time. The flu is gonna calm down. And, we'll get back to normal. But as of right now, things are gonna be upcharged regarding to these meat. So
If you ever
yeah.
if you ever wanted to try switching your diet to include more plant-based protein, be a great time to buy some beans. You know what I mean? Try some
Oh yeah.
try some other plant-based products. You know what I mean? A lot of people in general, especially in Western countries, especially in the U.S., meat and dairy consumption is a little overdone, and egg consumption. I think we're the world's largest consumer of eggs. So just in
Hmm.
general, the effects of this. I've had previous episodes discussing this. Bird flu is something me and everybody close to me were watching very carefully. We want to know the impacts it has on the world. We're very interested in global supply chains being affected by disease, especially since a lot of us got into this field of studying politics and studying the world and being on the internet and making podcasts right around the time of the COVID pandemic in 2020. So because of that, we want to know when a respiratory infection is ravaging the world, because hey, it might force a lot of you back inside and you might have to hear my voice a lot more than you are right now. All right, well, that's going to do it for us this week. Anything you want to leave the people with, Ferris, right before we send them off?
Uh, hopefully that you guys learned a few things, especially about all the crazy hecticness we're going through right now, and I just be prepared. I feel like we're gonna be talking a lot more news coming up. It's a day to day situation. Let me tell you that.
That, I think, is probably the catchphrase of this week's episode. Be prepared. All right, well, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below as to if you like the new format better than the old format. Do you want a past, present, future? Do you want a couple games thrown in? We've tried a few different things over the previous few episodes to try to get a rhythm going and establish a few things. Let us know which were your favorites in the comments below. Thank you as always for listening. Have a wonderful day.